Hello, I'm Morris Long, and this is a special bonus episode of the Video Games Are Bad For You podcast. Today we are debuting a new segment, and it is called If I Could Change One Thing. The rules are simple. I have to take one incident from gaming history or from modern gaming and change one element about it. What if we did one thing differently? How would the world look? And for the first attempt at this, I want to do the Wii U. Now, I want to do the Wii U for a couple reasons. For one, Google has now announced the Stadia console, and in lieu of it, and in lieu of what is most likely going to be a deluge of new branding, it's worth considering how game consoles become popular in the first place. On top of that, I find the Wii U's failure to actually be of particular interest. You see, I owned a Wii U, and I actually fell in love with the console. I liked it better than the Wii. Not only did the Wii U sport a superior library of video games, I actually enjoyed the second screen mechanic. And to me, it was no coincidence that that mechanic has found its way onto the Switch. But here's the reality, the Wii U failed, it made no money, and it actually caused Nintendo to hemorrhage from their war chest over the years. Thankfully, we're out of sort of a weird time for them now that the Switch has been released. But there was really a moment in the middle of the Wii U's life cycle where it looked like Nintendo was facing an existential threat. And while a lot of things went wrong with this console, there's one thing in particular that I think was mismanaged. And this is the one thing I would like to change about the Wii U. It should have only been called the U, or something similar to that. To understand why I think this, let's take a look back at the Wii. Now, the Wii is one of the greatest examples of console branding in the history of the games industry. There's a reason why this console was so successful. You see, the landscape of branding has changed over the years, but there are certain aspects that just hold true decade by decade, and one of them was coined by David Ogilvy when he invented the Marlboro Man. And that idea is, if you truly find the correct, dominating idea for a given brand, it will survive and endure generationally. And this is what happened with the Wii. The guiding principle of the Wii as a brand was gaming together. It was a party system, and every single bit of that console was built in lockstep with this dominating marketing principle. We oftentimes talk about the motion controls, but we don't talk about how the motion controls fit perfectly into this idea of gaming together. Motion controls are very simple. They're easy to pick up. They're easy to learn. They simulate real-life things. They're fun for all ages. We, us, together, that's what this console represented. And it was a party game console. There is a reason why the most successful Wii games are almost all co-op. And this is the mistake Nintendo made when they decided to call the Wii U a Wii U. Because there is nothing collective about the Wii U. It is actually, in many ways, the exact opposite of the Wii. Whereas the Wii was built around open accessibility, anyone can play, the Wii U has a devoted single-player controller. Almost every game that I loved on the Wii U is a single-player video game. And while the Wii U does have some games that still use Wii controls and utilize a lot of the tech from the previous hardware, it is at its core a much more individualized experience. If you remember when the Wii U was announced, one of the biggest issues that Nintendo ran into was that no one understood what the hell they were looking at. No one understood what the console did. I think a really big reason for this was that they put forth this second screen, one-player video game console, but then they named it after a console that was for everybody. It's reasonably debatable whether this was a good decision in the first place. Once again, not that I'm anti the Wii U, I really love the console, but considering how strongly Nintendo had built its brand around this sort of collective casual gaming system, there may have been no way to make a single-player console succeed. But they did themselves no favors by trying to brand it as a one-to-one with the prior console. This was a complete directional shift for Nintendo as a company, but they didn't want you to feel that, and as a result, they released a console that, though very different from the Wii, felt like sort of a Wii bonus. Now, obviously, if I could change more than one thing about the Wii U, I probably would have. I wouldn't have promised as much as Nintendo promised in its opening videos. I would have worked harder to cut deals with third-party developers. Or at the very least, I would have made sure internally that I could generate enough of my own games so that I didn't need those third-party developers in the first place. But the failure of this console started in the boardroom. It started when they decided to brand it as something that it wasn't. When you name something incorrectly, you break a promise to its buyers. Many people who I suspect bought a Wii U found themselves flummoxed at its failure to be an effective Wii duplicate. Meanwhile, I think that there were a lot of people who would have absolutely loved the Wii U, but skipped it because they were turned off by another Wii. Had Nintendo instead focused its branding on the Wii U as being a directional shift, localizing the console, and making it seem like a completely different system from the one that came before, I think it would have had a much more successful rollout. And don't take my word for it, consider Nintendo's branding with the Switch. They gave it a different name. They put its central gimmick up front. It has a completely different set of branding. It's a much more colorful console than the Wii. They have shifted the Switch away from Wii-style aesthetics. And the result is a sort of hybridized version of the Wii U that actually succeeded because people could finally understand what they were buying. You see, the pleasure factor of the Wii U was not the same as the pleasure factor of the Wii. It wasn't about gaming together. It was about the fact that you could game by yourself, anywhere, anytime. And that's why, even though the Wii U failed, I'm proud to say that with the Switch and now Google's new gaming console, it seems that the idea of personalized, portable, streamable gaming is going to endure for years to come. The Wii U was never a bad console, and it wasn't even a misguided one. It was a misbranded one. And who knows, but it probably could have succeeded if only they had done one thing different. Alright, thanks for listening. If you want to hear more of me, you can check out the Video Games Are Bad For You podcast. We're up once a week. We're actually gearing up right now for a lot of From Software coverage, so stay tuned. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Twitter. You know the deal. Oh, and if you want to send us an email, and you should, look for us at videogamesbadforyou@gmail.com. That's videogamesbadforyou@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.